Hello and welcome back to the Asteros Sophia Kairos Weekly Astro Update. And we're here moving into June. And I've got my good friend Christa here from practicalastros.com. Hi, Christa.
Hi.
And I'm Sonia from celestialastrology.com. And we're going to be looking at the 28th of May, just covering the very end of May and moving into the 4th of June. So welcome. And yeah, just to say, we're recording here on the 24th of May and Saturn is about to move into Aries. Dun, dun, dun.
I know. Yeah. The last moments. Well, at least for, we'll have this ingress for a couple of months and then we'll go back to Saturn and Pisces. So this is the premiere, but it's not permanent yet.
No, but certainly feeling that taste of it, certainly feeling it right on that threshold.
Definitely.
Sure.
No comment.
That's not a comment. Yeah, that's the best. So this looks a little bit crowded. I'm sorry for that. That's because we've got the very end of May, and we've only got one transit for the end of May, is the 30th, the Sun meeting Mercury. And then we've got June. So the whole of June, the 1st through to this part 2. And the highlights we've got here, I would say, are Jupiter going into Cancer on the 9th. That's going to be a big win. After Saturn, Jupiter is the next slowest planet. Jupiter in Cancer, that's its exalted sign. So that's going to be a very nice, happy placement for Jupiter. So we've all been looking forward to that, I would say, at least all year, if not for longer, as Jupiter's detriment in Gemini.
Yeah, going from detriment to exaltation really does change it. And then I like that the full moon immediately follows it. Just like, let's bask in this mutual reception of the moon and Jupiter for just a little bit, because you can see all of that stuff happening in June. There's just a lot of shift, a lot of pollination, is the way to look at it. All those little flowers being pollinated together as we're in this pollinator Gemini mutable season.
Yeah, it's just really nice because Venus is going to be in Taurus. So we've got both benefics in a very happy place. And it just feels like, okay, we've had some difficult times and now it's just lighting up in time for the sun then going into Cancer. And that's the summer solstice. That's Letha, right? Is that how we say it? Letha. The summer solstice. So the longest day as well, which just seems to come super quick. So the sun goes into Aries. It really just isn't very long until we get to that. And then after that, we've got a little bit of heaviness when Jupiter and Saturn square from Cancer to Aries. So that just reminds us, have your summer party, but there's a little bit of heaviness there. Then the Cancer new moon. So that's going to be our June.
I'll say my highlight is the sun meets Jupiter in Cancer right after the summer solstice. I like that. They can kind of bask in the sunshine and not care about the square. Back to Aries, Saturn.
Yes.
It is a little bit like just, whistling past the graveyard sort of a energy. I love when the sun meets up with any planet. I love a new moon. I love Cazimis, but the sun and Jupiter, they're at basically the height of summer with the height of the sun and the day benefic, of the solar sect, Jupiter exalted there, really close to the new moon. I feel like we'll need that. I don't think it's going to be easy all of June, but I think we'll have access to support. And then we'll be asked to support each other. That's kind of the tension, how we might experience it collectively and on a personal level. There'll be lots of highs and lots of chance of lows. I won't say definite lows. We might see the abyss, but we don't have to jump down into it.
That sounds right. Yeah. So here's our overview in the month in a different format, the graphic format. And as Christa said the very first time we showed it, and I just love this analogy, it shows where there's a little bit of rain and fertilization and what signs are feeling it. And at the moment, we have a sun in Gemini and it's going to be moving to Cancer on the 21st of June. So that brings in Cancer season. And as I said before, that's the summer solstice as well. So that'll just bring that longest day in and that feeling of celebration as well. And the sun as well will be moving from a mutable sign to a cardinal initiating sign.
Yep. Cancer is again water sign receptive, but Cancer is cardinal. And so it does feel yang. It feels momentum. Yes. It feels like it moves things forward.
In terms of who that affects, we're looking at the mutable people who are up here, Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius. But also the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. It'll be your birthdays, Cancer.
Cancer, yeah. Yeah, and the moon will go through all of these, kind of weaving it together as the moon does. But we'll have Mercury at home in Gemini, moving across that threshold into Cancer, and then all the way into Leo. So Mercury moves pretty quickly. It was retrograde back in Aries. And so as it came out of its shadow, it kind of sped up. It, moved through Taurus fairly quickly. and through Gemini. I think last year Mercury was in Gemini for just 14 days. It was like the shortest traveling it did. And it's similar to this. It really goes through Cancer pretty quickly and into Leo.
Yeah, you can just see from that distance that it's traveled how fast it's going. And the same really for Venus. She's traveling at quite a speed as well. She moves into her home sign of Taurus there, and she moves there on the 6th of June and spends her time moving through Taurus, her beautiful garden. But it's just nice, as we said, when we've got both benefics in a comfortable sign, that just gives everything a boost, no matter how hard or difficult things are, just having both those benefics to support that.
Yeah. Yeah. And similar to Mercury, Venus was also in a retrograde in Aries. And so after she's gone through the Cazimi, past her shadow, she has momentum. She's kind of being slung out of that slingshot. Whenever a planet is at home or exalted, it has just tools accessible that it's used to using. And so it doesn't have to spend a lot of bandwidth searching for the right fix. It's just at hand. And I think that adds to the flow of when Venus is at home, she's at her home and her temple with her things. And, she has really great taste in Taurus. And so she doesn't have to question, is this going to be of good quality? Is this sustainable? Does this harm the environment? Like all the things she's already, the ones that Taurus chooses, she is satisfied with. And so it's just like a really comforting flow. So I like the Venus and the Mercury just being in their own home signs, moving very freely after the retrograde in Aries. And similar to Mars, Mars was retrograde over the Leo Cancer for a while, from December all the way through winter and the spring. And now it's back in Leo. It's past the point where it went retrograde, and, it will be crossing that threshold from Leo into Virgo. And so it kind of has that momentum. I have Mars in Virgo, and I like Mars in Virgo. I know that it doesn't have a lot of just essential dignity there. By triplicity, it would, being an earth sign and having Mars be of the night sect. But Mars and Leo is definitely fiery. I feel like we're all collectively feeling it, especially currently with the Mars-Venus trine. But Mars has some good speed in Leo, and it goes into Virgo, where there's nothing really been happening except for the South Node. Mercury is at home. The house of Mercury, Gemini, and Virgo are well tended to. And so Mars going in there kind of shaking things up and, cutting. Mars and Virgo is a great editor. So editing out the things that are unnecessary, unuseful. It can be a little cutting. It can be a little clip of the tongue, maybe a little self-righteous, argumentative, having that square between Mars and Mercury, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, Jupiter forward in Gemini, just finishing up that time of it being in detriment, but it's there now with its host, Mercury. And that gives it a boost as well, where it's been struggling in detriment. I think just having Mercury there is just like, oh, okay. And the sun's there as well. It just feels a little bit more lifted than when it's been struggling. And then, of course, it's headed. It's got its eyes on the prize, on that exaltation in Cancer. So when it gets to the 9th of June, it's going to reach that Cancer point. And it's important to remember that Cancer is ruled by the moon. So the moon is going to be traveling the whole of the zodiac. So Jupiter's journey through Cancer can ebb and flow in the way that the moon does. It's going to travel through all those signs, and the moon has different dignities as it moves, and it has different experiences. It moves through these signs in 2.5 days. It travels really fast, and it has its ups and downs, and it moves through like the lunar stations as well. There's 28 of those as it travels. And they're all connecting with all the different stars, connecting with all the different planets, collecting everything up. Jupiter's going to be experiencing this as well and bringing that information to us. In Cancer here, it's all about our home comforts and protection and looking after ourselves. And Jupiter's going to be expanding all those feelings for us. So that's going to be a shift from Gemini, where it's been concerned about data and socializing and really expanding all that data that we don't want. All the spam in my emails that we don't want, and just it being a chore to get through the emails to find the one that you're actually looking for. That just feels like Jupiter in detriment in Gemini. So it's going to be a nice shift, I think.
Yeah. Shout out to all the Cancer risings to get Jupiter out of your 12th house and into the first.
Yes.
May your year be just more plentiful and less, more in your body and less in your head.
So those cardinal signs will feel that. So that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn will all get that little boost of this dignified Jupiter.
Yeah. Yeah. So Saturn is leaving Pisces for a little while, going into Aries, going into its fall, another cardinal sign. So when Saturn moves into Aries and Jupiter has moved into Cancer, they will be in that whole sign house square. It'll be exact, but just the house of Aries and the house of Cancer, by sign, they're cardinal. They're the same modality. And so they square each other, from Aries to Cancer. Aries kind of has the upper hand. It's called being on the 10th, right? It's casting the square to Cancer. So the demands of Saturn and Aries are being placed upon the Jupiter in Cancer there. But Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So it has the multi-layered benefit of having things provided to it. And maybe it's not the things that it would choose, like Venus and Taurus, like has access to her own well-placed good taste. Mm-hmm. Jupiter in Cancer relies on the fact that people will come to its aid and bring gifts to it and bring tools to it and offer solutions that maybe it wouldn't have thought of on its own. So an exalted planet really is kind of being carried around by the goodwill of its allies. And so it being exalted versus Saturn, which is exalted in Libra, the opposite sign of Aries. So it's fallen in Aries. And so it really has to work hard to gain access to allies and its own tools. And it has a hard time expressing itself just naturally with its own flow. So it's complicated. It's not so straightforward. Yes, Jupiter in Cancer is, just objectively like a really nice placement for the year, because Jupiter takes about a year to go through each sign. But having that square from Saturn, it's going to be tricky, and it might be the square that disrupts the Jupiter in Cancer, that causes the aid and support to come from Jupiter's allies. So it's not like when you're having an easy time and everything's flowing for you, people don't feel like you're in need, and so they don't help you out because you don't really need help. People come to your aid and they help you when something is happening to you or you're asking for it. And so I think that the Saturn in Aries is going to cause disruption or discord or harm or challenges. It will be threatening to some degree, and that threat will then prompt the support to come. That to me, it almost helps the exaltation of Jupiter there to have a reason to come fight for Cancer. So we'll get that first taste of it. Check swatch in a few hours of Saturn and Aries, at least.
Really feel that building up.
Uh-huh.
Then we see Uranus here just edging closer to Gemini. It's in the last degrees of Taurus. And you can really feel it when planets reach those last degrees. It's not going to be until July that it moves.
Yeah, we're not going to have it in June.
Yeah, July the 7th it will move. So we're just seeing the last days of Uranus in Taurus, but of course it will retrograde back as well, like the others. But just interesting how when it moves, this sextile will come into place between the outer planets talking to each other. So I'm quite excited for that to happen. I've spoken about that before. And Pluto's been stationary at 3 degrees, hasn't it, for making its conversations with the other planets as they meet it. And Neptune is ready to greet Saturn when he enters Aries.
Hello, old friend.
Yeah. Yeah, they met in Pisces, but it's a totally different vibe here in fiery Aries. It's like the end of the zodiac there in that final place of Pisces and Jupiter's temple, and now they're going into Mars's home place, the exaltation of the sun, as opposed to the home of Jupiter and the exaltation of Venus. And now it's the home of Mars and the exaltation of the sun. So it's a very hot, fiery place, as opposed to this watery, dreamy, pleasant, benefic place.
Yeah, the crossover point between Pisces and Aries, when I think about the merging of the significations of Neptune and Saturn, I think of a volcano erupting out of the ocean in the South Pacific. That yes it was like, maybe it made things warm underwater, and then it encouraged life. And you had, bioluminescence that made it like magical. But what was happening was this heat was building. And then when they come out together in Aries, then you have this formation of lava rock, which is that hot, fiery Saturn coming out. And then all the steam from a volcano, which is the Neptune in Aries, like them coming together. And so what has been under the surface in Pisces is now finding form in a real flashy, hot, impressive, masculine way of like that triangle shape of a volcano bursting out of the ocean, causing, ripple and maybe earthquake later on in the ocean through another neighboring island, but it's forming something pretty impressive. And that's kind of the visual has come to me from that Pisces to Aries, specifically with Neptune and Saturn. So we'll get to see what volcanoes are mutually erupting together with those two. And your Aries house.
Yes, that cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn as well. Prepare for that volcano. What new lava rocks are forming in your life. Watch out for that. So let's look at this week. We've not got a lot, but what's happening is nice and exciting. We're going to be looking at the Sun conjunct Mercury, which is known as a Cazimi in Gemini. We've been looking forward to this. It's a Mercury superior conjunction. And then we have Venus conjunct Chiron. And we don't always look at Chiron, but in a quieter week, we can bring it in. Chiron, known as the wounded healer. And again, this is in Aries. It's all about who are you and how do you express yourself, and your wounds about speaking up. And then Venus about your feminine wounds, individuality, feminine rights, and bringing opportunities to heal. It's almost like Sun conjunct Mercury, like, again, speaking up, how we speak out.
Yeah, I mean, we look at these and it's just two things that we're talking about for this week, but it feels like we're still considering what has just happened. So the last full week of May and then this partial week of May do really feel like they blend together, because we still have that Saturn and Aries energy. We still have, all this Gemini informing it. And so the Sun conjoining Mercury. So with any planet, when it gets into the heart of the sun, it kind of has access to that solar energy. And Mercury is at home in Gemini. So the whole time it's getting close to the sun, because it's moving faster than the sun, it's not being burned up. The idea of being in its own chariot is kind of protected. There was that show, The Walking Dead, and there was this point where they had to get through all the zombies. And so they just slaughtered some zombies and covered themselves up with zombie guts so that they could walk through the zombie horde to get to their destination. To me, that's like being in your own chariot. It's like you're protected from what should kill you. It should burn you up. But Mercury, being one of the great psychopomps, being able to travel through all those hot rays of the sun to get to the throne room of the sun, to have the secrets that the sun is illumination, it's truth, it's spirit. And to have access to what's in the middle of that while it's traveling through Gemini, it's so sweet. And how to use it practically is, look at your Gemini house and then, look at what meanings you would find from whatever house it's in, and sit in meditation like you would if you were in a holy place like the throne room of the sun, and see what truths you really need to be honest about, or what truths you want to be given to you. Because to me, that's like the best experience of a Cazimi, is being open to receiving whatever messages come through, especially Mercury Cazimi, because Mercury is the messenger, it's a communicator. So I think having that moment, it also will translate what has just happened through the last, week and a half of May, because there's a lot, and there's a lot of new things and a lot of shifting of energies with these outer planet ingresses that have happened or are about to happen. And I feel like the Cazimi is that chance to really integrate and what might become of these new paradigm shifts. And so I'm looking forward to it, one, because I'm a Cazimi stan. I love Cazimis. It's a Mercury and Gemini Cazimi. And there's a lot of stuff happening, which is hard to pin down exactly what it could mean. And so this is we're all given this chance to kind of glean maybe what it could mean, and then layer on top of it just on your natal chart of, one, do you have Gemini placements that are close to that 9 degree? The tarot card that's with this is Gemini 1. It's the 8 of Swords, right? And so it's this person that's blindfolded and they are bound and they're walking away from a village. It's like there's a sense of exile. It's a sense of the birth of consciousness of I found something out that really changed the way I think about the community that I'm in or the village that I'm in. And I have to kind of go off and figure it out and discover it. And it won't be easy, but it's kind of necessary. It's necessary to break out of that cocoon and, form out of the chrysalis and be a butterfly, which is related to something that we were talking about before we even started recording. I didn't even think about that, but it's just it's a good bloom sort of moment.
It really is. Should we look at the chart?
Yeah.
The chart for this Cazimi, and in London it falls in the first house.
Great, where Mercury likes to be.
Yeah, Yeah, and conjunct Jupiter as well.
So in London, it's nice having it right there in the first house. You know, it's going to happen fairly early in the morning. The sun will have just risen, right? The sun is at 9 degrees, the ascendant's at 13. So it's just that if you can sit where the sun rises and you see those first rays really like break through, as long as there's no clouds or not a lot of clouds, just having that flash of illumination, to me, that's just a brilliant way to experience what Cazimis can be. And it's in Gemini, it's in Mercury's temple, it's illumination of the mind. So we have this in the first, we have the moon and at home in Cancer in the second. They actually have a nice antitia between the two of them, which is great. For this day, this is a Friday morning. And yeah, I don't know what to say more about it, except that I'm looking forward to it. And if you have any sort of magical practice, I think Cazimis are a great way to kind of access those. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like mercurial significations as the herald, ruling our thoughts and communications and everything, and just seeing it there right above the ascendant. It's like the herald coming up with the sun. It's like beautiful to see it right there just above the ascendant, and the way that Mercury travels above and below the borders. But it just couldn't be more beautiful. Just that timing of that. Is that 6:12 or 5:12? My eyes.
5:12.
5:12 a.m. in British Standard Time, so that would be 4.
It's just past midnight on the east coast of the U.S., and so it'll be like 9 o'clock for West Coasters. You know, I mean, well, on Thursday night. So if you're in London, you're in the UK or Ireland, then you're going to have a great
just feels like
inspiring morning.
Some message here for the UK. But it's a superior conjunction, which means that it's becoming an evening star there as it's rising. No.
Yeah. No, so as it goes through, and then it'll be ahead of the sun. And so like in a month's time, it will be in Cancer. And so if we forward the chart where Gemini house sets, Cancer will be kind of behind it, right? And so you'll be able to see it after the sun has set. So it is an evening star. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So it's an evening star. And it's also Gary Caton, the sky astrologer. If you find him on social media, he teaches about the different phases of Mercury as it goes through transitions. And this brings it back into its trickster phase. And I just love that for Mercury Cazimi happening in Gemini, that brings it into this trickster phase. It just feels like a very mercurial signification for Mercury that he gets to be the trickster again. But that means for us, just be warned, because we've got Mercury going into Gemini, then we've got the Gemini full moon, and then we've got the Cazimi, a lot of Mercury things, and we've also got this Jupiter in Gemini as well, expanding it all. Just be careful, because not everything's going to be true. All this data and information that we're receiving, and all these communications and the socializing and everything, there may well be a trickster element to it. So it's like a little bit of a warning as well. When Mercury's in this trickster phase, is he goes through phases, and sometimes he's a psychopomp, sometimes he's a messenger, sometimes, different phases of what he's actually doing. Sometimes he is the herald, and sometimes he's a messenger, so sometimes you're just looking out for those messages. But when he's in trickster phase, you just...
Like now?
Yes. Yeah, he's literally saying, hi.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think Mercury is always slightly in a trickster phase, and slightly in a psychopomp phase, and slightly in a herald phase. I think that might be more clear, at different phases where he is in the sky. But the best thing about Mercury is that you can't pin it down. And the worst thing about Mercury is that you can't pin it down.
Yes. Yeah. You just grow to love that and just work with it. I just like, hi, Mercury, I see you. Thank you for showing up. I'm just grateful whenever he shows up.
Yeah.
It's lovely to have him around. And the fact that you can receive these really serious, helpful messages from him, and just also just fun little winks.
Loves to wink. Such a charmer.
Yeah. And I think if you appreciate the jokes and the winks, then he'll be more helpful with the serious information that's going to really help you as well. If you just appreciate and acknowledge when he's around, that's what's great.
Yeah, the way to engage with Mercury, it's like the love tightly, hold lightly. It's like you can't take him too seriously, and you can't disregard him, you or her or it or them. You have to really find that. You have to be able to dance with whatever wind Mercury is kind of being blown in on. And so it changes. You can't have a standard modus operandi with Mercury. You have to, Mercury teaches us how to navigate and be the trickster ourselves and be the herald ourselves and be the psychopomp ourselves. If anything, the planets like to find form through our lives. And so Mercury is the one that just is always changing, and it moves around only second most to the moon and doesn't have a sect. It's not bound to the day sect or the night sect. And I enjoy Mercury, but I also don't necessarily think that they're always on my side, you know?
Yeah.
Like, okay, maybe I'll get you next time. That's how it is with Mercury.
Yeah, just enjoy the experience of knowing he's around. They're around. It's probably better to say they. And yeah, it's like I think when I've really needed them to show up, he's shown up in a great way.
Yep.
And the other times it's just a case of just laughing along with the jokes. And if you think of them as like an eternal child, it's the same thing, that they're going to be messing around, having fun, and sometimes it causes you problems.
I also think that it's almost like, I find that Mercury is a planet that likes to engage with us too. You know, having had experiences with Jupiter, I just feel like I just get on his nerves. You know, having experience with Venus, I'm just in awe. But Mercury, it feels like they talk back to you.
Yes.
In a way. And the other planets, like that, yes, I'm in awe of all of them, but the engagement that Mercury seems to also enjoy being a part of, to have a Cazimi with Mercury at home, it's just special. And so if you've never kind of had a conversation with a planet before, I would just start with this one.
Because Mercury wants that attention. And for a child, any attention is good attention.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas I suppose the heavier, more weighty planets, they're busier. They've got like serious business to do. But Mercury's like, yep, any attention, come talk to me.
Yep.
So he doesn't mind. Thank you, Mercury.
Cheers, Hermes.
Yeah.
So this is the Chiron.
Yeah. 1st of June, we got Venus conjunct Chiron. And again, just later degrees, the last decan of Aries. And we think of the Venus significations of love and pleasure, peace, harmony, women, art, beauty. And the principle of Venus is attraction, bringing people together. She likes, you know, whether it's in Libra, she's looking for justice and bringing people together, seeking justice and peace. Or if it's in Taurus, it's more the pleasure principle and seeking comfort. But here in Aries, she's uncomfortable. She's in her fall here. So, and this Chiron feels particularly difficult for her because she's, I feel like maybe seeking rights, feminine or women's rights, maybe seeking justice for that, and finding how to speak out and how to address that maybe in Aries. Because in Aries, we're fighting for something and fighting for ourselves. Who are we? Learning who we are and how to speak up for ourselves. And that's very definitely what the Chiron wound is in Aries, is people who've maybe learn not to speak up for themselves, or are having to learn how to speak up for themselves, and maybe had their voices shut down and had difficulties. So he's known as the wounded healer. But what we often find is that when we're helping others, we realize that we needed to hear that, you know, the wisdom or the comfort that we're sharing. You know, quite often if you're speaking and counseling a friend, you realize I needed to hear that too, whether you needed to hear it from somebody else when you were younger, or whether it's something that actually I need to take that advice too. I need to take my own advice. And quite often that's a Chiron thing, you know, that we actually reach out and help others, but we're helping from a place of our own pain and our own wounding and our own experiences of difficulty, but we don't always realize it. And it's how we offer help. So when these two come together, you know, maybe how it shows up is a woman that's offering help to us, or us offering help to the women in our lives. So certainly be aware of the women in your lives who may need help, and certainly don't be afraid of reaching out. And also don't be afraid of reaching out to the women in your lives if you need help, or speaking up for the women in your lives as well. That kind of feels like how that's signifying. But also we see that Uranus here is in Venus's domicile. They can't see each other. There's no sight. Uranus there has been shaking things up. And Uranus is at a new 28 degree. And every aspect that it's had that we've been talking about before has been at 27. But Uranus is now in new ground, shaking things up. Venus will soon be there. But it's bringing like maybe new insights, even though Venus can't see them yet. It's sort of preparing the ground, it feels like there's new things for Venus to work on. I don't know quite how I want to expressed that yet, but
I feel like that whatever ground is being broken, that's going to be happening in the Taurus house, Venus's temple, maybe she won't realize it, and maybe we won't realize it until after she's moved into Taurus.
yes,
That it might be happening during this time, and the realization or the awareness, like right now we might have a blind spot to it, and having that disruption of whatever it may be in the Taurus house, it comes to realization later after she moves back into Taurus.
Yeah, because you'll have like that whole sign aspect the whole time she's there.
Yeah, I like this chart. We look at the moon and Mars up there in Leo and a trine to that Chiron Venus, and then we look at Jupiter in sextile to that Chiron Venus. And so we have, 2 fire houses of Leo and Aries, and then the air house of Gemini, all kind of in connection with each other. And so that's, the moon, Mars, Jupiter, Venus together, those are all talking to each other pretty specifically during this moment where Venus comes together with Chiron, kind of as the new focal point, that the communication, the speaking up, the defending of it a little bit, because the defensiveness with Mars likes to defend and be that martyr with the cause of injury to the feminine. But then Jupiter and Gemini really wanting to make things easier. Jupiter and Venus, tend to gather things together and want to make things work together. And so I could see it being maybe difficult, with Mars and the moon there really wanting to kind of bring justice with the Jupiter there as well. And just all that conjunction happening with the other planets, it does feel pretty expressive and defensive and fiery and passionate. And I think maybe that might also speaks to the disruption that Uranus is going to be having, that we just won't really see what the results are until later. The best thing about fire is like that flaming sort of truth. It just kind of burns away all that is unnecessary. And for the fight for women in your life, whether it's yourself, which I think might be, like Aries is about the singular self and the expression of self. Venus's decan is this 25 degree, from basically 20 to 30, the last 10 degrees of Aries is Venus's decan. And so these are themes of Venus, of the individual, and the expression through the moon and through that Mercury ruled sign and Jupiter's placement there. It feels kind of like a bang to start June off with, and a bang of maybe like, how do we defend ourselves and our place in the world as women? And how do we support other women around us, and the ability to express the injuries that we collectively experience and individually experience because we are women? That's kind of how it sings to me.
Yeah, it's going to be important. I've just realised, of course, that Uranus is squaring the moon there as well. So that's
it'll be a pretty quick square. Thankfully, the moon moves pretty close or pretty fast.
but
at that moment,
at that moment they're talking, and the moon can represent women as well, but also our bodies, unfortunately. So yeah, maybe the moon's holding that information for Venus ready. So that's it for this week. And yeah, we need to think of a word.
What's come for me is just allies, and just the symbol of the triangle. The triangle is like the most supportive structure. There's also the injury of triangulation, of like pitting one person against the other, and then it just like goes around and pinging around without anybody taking responsibility. So as we were talking, I was like, the symbol of a triangle, and like, how do you support without just getting into an eddy of enabling? So it's not really a word. It's more about just the experience of having that symbol of a triangle be supportive and not enabling.
Yeah, no, I think allies is right, because that's like, look to your allies, but also look to support your allies. Yeah. Is there a triangle emoji? I hope there is. Or we'll just use the symbol.
I'm sure. Yeah, we can just use a symbol. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Christa from Practical Astros. And we'll be back next week looking at the 4th to the 11th of June. So yeah, we've kicked June off, and we'll be back. See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.